I've seen a lot of people say that 2023 was a terrible year for music. I obviously do not agree with that statement. Nowadays, you kind of have to dig deep to find quality music, whether people like it or not. And I feel like majority of the time, people don't enjoy finding new music because it does take time, does take energy. I won't even lie to you, it's kind of time consuming. That being said, I do think there's at least 10 great albums that came out this year. So here is my top 10 albums of the year, and I understand if you disagree with me. And my top 10 is generally in this underground indie rock, alternative rock type of scene or whatever. So if you think I'm tripping, then it's all good. I probably won't have any of the big name albums that came out this year from bigger rapper artists or anything like that. And as I look at my list of notes, I completely forgot honorable mentions, but at the top of my head, I feel like there's really only 10 albums I want to talk about. So number 10, I'm going to go with Duster Remote Echoes. I believe this was a compilation album, meaning they took a lot of their deep cuts or unfinished songs from the 90s or any era of Duster. So you might think I'm cheating, but it's technically an album. It's my list. Stop making me feel bad, please. There's never a moment in time whenever I listen to Duster and think, what was the thought process for this song? Or couple songs, or even album. Most of the time, they seem like they know what they're doing, and what they do good is provide slow core. They create what I like to call memory music. They simply create nostalgic feeling songs with incredible noises. Weed Supreme is a legendary song if you ask me. The song has a lot of arcade-like noises, and when Duster pulls that out, it's over. I never question the vocals because there's not really a bad way to sing on these songs unless you're just screeching for no reason because the instrumentals are completely lo-fi. But yeah, this was a good album for a lot of Duster fans and a lot of people who like slowcore / lo-fi type of music. Don't really have too much to say about it other than the fact that I really enjoyed it and it made my top 10. At number 9, I have Greg Mendez's self-titled album. If you're into Elliott Smith and heavy acoustic stuff, then this album is exactly what you need. The songwriting is no question the best part about this whole album. I love the way Greg Mendez sings. It's so vulnerable and sensitive. It seems simple the way he provides all the choruses and melodies, but it's really not that simple if you think about it. The energy captivates you. The guitar parts are really interesting. It is like a soft-spoken type of vocals thing he has going on, but Greg Mendez does create a safe feeling whenever you're listening to every one of his songs. So it really is like a mashup of Alex G and Elliott Smith if I really try to put it together. There's not really any dull moments on here when I look at it. I find myself going back to the album consistently, and it's just always a pleasant experience to have. When I did read about it online, there was a lot of high ratings for the album, a lot of respect given towards Greg Mendez, which is really, really awesome. And that just gave me all the confidence to talk about it. But to be honest, I would still talk about it if everybody thought it was trash. So yeah, Greg Mendez self-titled album, awesome. At number 8, I have the band At and their album Mind Palace Music, a folk / indie throwback to the 70s, maybe even late 60s in terms of sound. Obviously, the duo is undeniably influenced by 70s and late 60s or just 60s era type of music. And what I mean by that is the guitars are mainly acoustic, but they layer it all very beautifully. The vocals reminded me a ton of Karen Carpenter, and to all the Karen Carpenter appreciators / Carpenter's lovers, that may seem like an absurd statement, but I swear, just stay with me for 1 second, man. There were moments where the singer did sound like Karen Carpenter, and even if it was a little bit off, that's still a crazy bar to kind of reach or almost get to. Now, the vocals didn't always sound like that, but you know what? It was perfect. It didn't sound like they were ripping off anybody, and my God, it was an experience. The consistency is admirable, and I feel like there's no dull moments. I don't get bored. A fun time the whole time. There's a campfire / road trip type of vibe to this whole album. If I had a road trip going on, I would definitely have this on repeat or just play the whole album throughout. It definitely suits the mood for that. But yeah, a definitely modern twist, indie rock / folk stuff going on from back then mixed to now. I would give it a chance if I were you. At number 7, I have Hotline TNT's Cartwheel album. I talked about the band in my last video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out, please. Thank you. Appreciate you. It had a very clear, polished tone compared to their 2021 album, 19 in Love. This album was not a slouch at all. In fact, I feel like the band progressed in terms of songwriting and the way the production was laid out. It does step into a different level when you compare the two albums, so they did grow, obviously. And this album does have a certain sound where I feel like a wider population, a wider mainstream type of crowd would really dig, because it has a cleaner sound. There is distortion. It is layered and quieter distortion, almost pillowy, but an album I guess that anybody could appreciate or listen to. There are parts of the album where I do skip a couple songs, but I feel like the highs are very high and I can't just ignore that. So shout out Hotline TNT and Cartwheel. At number 6, I have Joanna Sternberg's album, I've Got Me. This album is very special, and I feel like a lot of people who rate albums online are rating this album highly, and that makes me so happy. When I first listened to this album, I felt so focused and I felt warm at the same time, because the stories that Joanna Sternberg tells really felt sensitive and true. The pictures are being painted and they're so clear, to the point where it's like, oh my goodness, this is unreal. It's sort of like that Daniel Johnston sort of vibe when you listen to it. There is a sensitive sorrow type of sound in the vocals, but it also feels bright at the same time because it's so real. A huge fan of this album, a huge fan of the songs, a huge fan of the artist. Shout out Joanna Sternberg. And the album cover reminds me a lot of like those 90s cartoons, specifically Daria. So that gets a little bit of extra points from me. At 5, I have Feeble Little Horse, Girl with Fish, a phenomenal band that I want to talk about in a future video. But let me talk about the album first. This album was ridiculous. There's so many great moments on here. They utilize this recipe where it's slow, soft vocals, and then boom, you just got punched in the face with this glitchy type of distortion and this wave of shoegazeness, but it's not shoegaze, but it is. To me, this whole album feels and sounds like a coloring book. I know that doesn't make any sense, but just think about it. You see a coloring book, what do you think of? Colors. It might be a picture of like animals or something, but like the whole point is you're coloring something, and that whole band made that description with noise on an album without getting boring. I can't get enough of this album. It's really good. At 4, I have Hello Mary's self-titled album. I've talked about Hello Mary in a previous video, and a lot of you showed love, so thank you for that. Like I said from that video, Harmony Heaven. This trio is one of the better bands that's coming up in this new wave of generation of alternative rock. Not only are they probably the best in my opinion with harmonies, they provide riffs as well. And what do I mean by riffs? They make a lot of riffs where I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have made that. They're not boring. The whole album has different little parts and recipes. They grab your attention. There is some sort of realness going on with the lyrics. Everything about this album and band really is enjoyable. So incredible, in fact, that I have the vinyl right here. At number 3, a random genre that I don't really talk about on here or in general, but number 3, 100 gecs, 10,000 gecs. Let's talk about it. Oh man, oh boy, oh humanoid. People don't really like 100 gecs, and I don't understand why. I actually feel like I understand why. And that's because it sounds like a bunch of chaotic noises going on, a lot of no substance noise creating a lot of annoying vocal auto-tune stuff going on. But that's exactly what makes it great. Everything has a purpose, man, with this group or band or whatever. There's so many head bobbing moments on this album where I'm just like, oh my god. It's really fun, and I feel like people don't give it a chance because it's probably abrasive to them and they listen to more calm, normal music or whatever. I feel like there's fun in every type of music. I'm not saying all music is phenomenal and all music is the best ever, because there's some terrible music out there, but there might be some good in everything, and I feel like there's a whole lot of good in this album, in this group, in 100 gecs. Respect them, please. Many nasty faces were being made while I was listening to this album when it first released. I was like, I saw them live at Sick New World, and they were great performers as well. The venue was really big, and I was thinking to myself, if they're really good in a humongous venue, they must be crazy good in a smaller venue, which I think is what they usually play. So yeah, man, so much good stuff. At number 2 now, I have Waveforms, Antarctica. I never know how to say that word correctly, but I feel like I nailed it on the head right there. The progression and evolution of Waveform is really interesting and beautiful to look at, really. They sort of burst through this whole album with such beautiful, memorable memory type of melancholic noises. Every song feels completely different, as it should. It doesn't feel out of place at all, really. There's an energy shift within each song. I have talked about this album a lot on my TikTok, and I just started talking about it in my last video about indie rock and all that. A lot of cool moments and emotional feeling music where it's just like, man, I want to write a song like that. It is an album I feel like a lot of people could listen to and could get into even if they've never even heard of Waveform. Waveform killed it on here. And I'm glad they did, man. I didn't expect anything less. And at number 1, who do I have? I have Narrowhead, Moments of Clarity. What can I say about this album that I have not said before? The amount of times I've talked about this album on TikTok, on here even, in general, in real life with my friends. I don't have any friends. The band finally comes into their own and they know their identity and they just punch you in the face from the beginning. They stamp their identity with a bunch of hard-hitting and even slowed down fuzzy songs. They have 3 guitarists, so it should be loud, but the way they make it loud and clean cut at the same time without being too punchy in your face sounding. It's thick and fat and juicy type of guitar with recognizable vocals, nasally type of tone to the vocals, which I really like because it stands out. Big fan of the band. Big fan of the album. That is my top 10 of the year. Thank you for watching. I'll leave a link down below, leaving all the Spotifys of these bands. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. Have fun. Top 10 albums of 2023.